Welcome back to the week, ladies and gentlemen. As I told you before I left, I'm going to follow up my segment now with the second co-facilitator of Education Task Force. I'm being joined now, ladies and gentlemen, by Dr. George Henry. Dr. Henry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alton. It's so good to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you and Charlton here in the studio to talk about something that I know that everybody is definitely concerned about. And being an educator in the medical profession, I know that there's something that's near and dear to your heart. But Dr. George, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I wasn't actually born here in LaGrange, but I moved here with my family and when I was 11 years old, sixth grade. Went through high school here, met my wife-to-be here in LaGrange, went on to Emory University, medical school there, and a 44-year experience in psychiatry.
Okay.
We came back to LaGrange after a 35-year absence, and have been living here now since 1995.
Okay.
Coming back home again.
Coming back home again.
Yes.
And you know what, one of the things I can say, Dr. Henry, I met you some years ago. You didn't just come back and sit down and kind of enjoy the retirement. You got involved. You're involved with the Calumet Center, just to name a few things. You're now involved with the Racial Trust Building, and out of that came the Educational Task Force. Talk about your reason for being involved with that.
Well, that sequence is really very much related to why I'm in it. When the racial reconciliation, now really called trust building, when trust building began some 7 years ago, I was privileged with many other people in our diverse community here to take training in things that we should have known and did know but didn't quite know how to do, about relating to one another in a very deep personal way. And that actually changed my life, to begin to participate in racial reconciliation with people I had known but didn't know. And we became close and we trusted each other in important ways. Out of that then grew certain other organizations, not formed by racial reconciliation, but flowing out of it. Okay. And one of those was called Troop Acts, again, a very diverse group interested in all things related to helping people raise their standard of living and their position and their power and their education. And then from that was formed the Educational Task Force that Charlton Askew has mentioned to you before. So that was sort of my way in. Okay. And that began 5 years ago.
Okay, absolutely. And again, education is so important. And I learned you're a doctor of psychiatry, correct?
Yes.
So Charlton was talking a moment ago when he was on about word gap and building vocabulary, things of that nature. Why is that so important in your training?
Well, brain development is a very complicated and extraordinarily important process in children. And brain development begins, of course, before birth, and it accelerates in the first years of life, obviously, but around age 2.5, 3, all of those nerve cells in the brain that are connected in very important ways begin to change. The connections in some areas become strong. In other areas where there's not so much a need for the human to develop that, they kind of get laid aside in the brain development. But what's so critical now we're talking about is talking, speaking, learning, communicating. And that process begins very early as mothers and dads talk with their little ones. Grandparents ogle over them and all of that. And what we know scientifically is that the experience of the baby, the little one, the toddler, in hearing words spoken to them is critical in what they later can learn to do, to read, to do math, to grow, to develop, to learn. And so this thing about a word gap goes this way. There is a huge difference in the number of words spoken to children that you can tell between people in the very lowest poverty-stricken areas of life and the more affluent, more, say, highly educated groups, whatever their other designations. And some people have said, one study suggested that as many as 30 million words not heard, a gap of 30 million words from the age of, say, 3 and on exists between the very lowest and the very highest. Well, that 30 million number has been questioned. And so only one study showed that. Others, though, have confirmed the basic principle that it really matters what little children, babies and toddlers and little children hear in the language. So therefore, what is said to them, what is read to them, what they hear in others around is critical. The parents, the grandparents, everyone.
Absolutely. And you know, Charlton was saying we're bringing about the awareness, and he talked about how the community can get involved. From your perspective, and having been in the field that you're in, what would you say to those parents that may feel, well, I just don't have the time, or I'm not that educated one? What would you say to those individuals?
Well, of course, so many parents do have very limited time, particularly when we're talking about the very important group of those in poverty. The intergenerational poverty is the most stressful of it, but others too. So that when parents have to work overtime, work at night, when the times are tough, single parents, etc., it really is hard to do as much as is needed, and yet it really is needed. So what we want parents to understand, grandparents to understand, keep always at a top priority in your mind, what is my child getting? So if the parent can't do it and you want to see that somebody else trusted can talk with them, read to them, and all of that.
Okay, absolutely. And because ultimately, Dr. Henry and Charlton also mentioned this as well, because what we are trying to do is lift the community out of that poverty-stricken arena. And by everybody getting involved, and Charlton used the word owning it, you know, owning the fact that, you know, we do have, you know, areas that have suffered a little bit more, and owning it and everybody getting involved, I think then we start to see the entire community rise, and then we see various other types of jobs that come into our community. Talk about the correlation between the education and the job relationship.
Well, the correlation between education and jobs is just, I think it's just obvious, but we have to be reminded of it. And we also have to be reminded of what is our responsibility in that, so that the our here is the community. As Charlton can say so beautifully, it's everyone. It takes each part of the community. So that, for instance, parents and other family, but also neighbors, employers, business leaders, people, and the school system, most importantly too, have to always be focused on the child. And to do so means to move toward preparing that child and that teenager for the work and the life calling to come. So all of those things are so important. I just would want to make one specific recommendation that Charlton can say so well, but it takes the parent trying to get the kid to school every day and on time. It all matters, because being in the classroom on time and listening and participating is essential. But now, in the challenges of virtual learning for some of our kids still, and there's going to be some virtual learning going on for a long time, it looks like. It's very important to be sure we know what's happening to those kids and support those kids when they are looking at the computer, when they're learning that way. So being sure they're staying with it is critically important. And if I may, I'd like to make one other observation that has come up in the educational task force. There is really a concern oftentimes that for some of the older children in our school system, say some of the kids in high school, who are in virtual learning experiences, not all the time are they staying with that system. They may start in the day and check in and then kind of check out and go do other things. And sadly, Alton, we've learned of some cases in which kids who have a part-time job and they need to be in their school work, even if it's at home on the computer, they also are being called upon to work and be at their job during the school hours. And we want to be sure that the community who hire folks know to support education all the way through, because the future of those kids and the future of the jobs depends on it.
Absolutely. And that's a good point. I didn't even think about that, that some kids are I'm going to say skipping school, but I guess that's what they're doing and going to work. Yeah, they're skipping school.
And it just underlines for me very starkly why it really is that we're all in it.
Absolutely.
And so the business person needs to be thinking, how can I and my business, our workforce, help kids?
It's all about, again, it's the community support, and we're all in it together. Dr. Henry, as we get ready to close out, Charlton mentioned about involvement, volunteerism, and you hit on it and alluded to it, talking about the parents, the grandparents, the employer, all need to be involved. To those individuals that are still watching, and they want to say, well, Dr. Henry, I want to get involved. How can they get involved?
Well, there are a number of ways. There's always the way to volunteer at a school, to go, can I help? It's just some of what I know. Can I help? But then there's ways to get training and support in actually tutoring kids. Charlton and his wife Connie tutor kids every week, and they've done it for a long time, become mentors to them. So how can some of that happen? Well, our local group called Get Troop Reading, here, a very important organization, they have sponsored, along with the school system, a training process for people who specifically would work with kids ages in grades 3, 4, and 5. And there's a training program one can get involved in, contacting, for instance, Nicole Kennedy at the school system. Nicole Kennedy. She can get folks lined up to have short training in how to assist kids in their learning when they're doing virtual work. We call it 3, 4, 5, grades 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, Thrive.
3, 4, 5,
That's
Thrive.
The program, and people can volunteer.
Well, Dr. Henry, it's a pleasure to have you come on the show and follow up along with Charlton Askew about the Educational Task Force. And again, I know that this community is a very caring community and one that will get involved. And the only thing that I will ask, if there's a contact number, I forgot to ask Charlton that question, is there a contact number that they could call if somebody would like to get involved? Is there a contact number for that? And if so, I'll get it from Charlton and we'll put it on our lower third so people can. If
you will, let's get that from him, because
I sure will.
He'll give you the best advice on that and so many other things.
Thank you very much. Dr. Henry, I want to thank you again for being my guest today. And again, I know that we will all come together to make sure that we have an educated workforce that's ready for those jobs that are coming. So thank you once again for being my guest.
Thank you, Alton.
All right.